When women describe their most memorable romantic experiences, they rarely explain them in logical steps. They don't say, first he said this, then I calculated that, then I decided to feel something. Instead, they say something far more revealing: one thing just led to the next. That phrase isn't vague or accidental. It's a direct window into how feminine attraction actually works. Romance, for women, is not built through planning or intellectual reasoning. It's built through emotional momentum, a sequence of feelings that flow naturally from one moment to the next. When that momentum is present, resistance disappears, overthinking fades, and the connection deepens without effort. Emotional momentum means the feeling is always moving forward. This is where most men get confused. They try to logically structure romance. They plan what to say, when to act, how to escalate, what the next step should be. But logic interrupts emotional flow. The moment a woman feels like a moment is being manufactured or mentally managed, she becomes self-aware. And self-awareness kills romantic immersion. Women don't want to feel like a decision was made. They want to feel like an experience happened. This is why emotional momentum matters more than perfect execution. A man doesn't need flawless words or perfect timing. He needs the ability to move emotions from one state to the next smoothly. Calm to curiosity, curiosity to comfort, comfort to excitement, excitement to intimacy. When each emotional state naturally flows into another, the entire experience feels inevitable rather than intentional. And inevitability is what makes romance feel magical. A masculine man leads emotional momentum by being present and responsive, not scripted. He doesn't pause moments to analyze them. He doesn't break energy with hesitation or overthinking. He stays connected to the emotional tone and allows it to evolve naturally. That's why women later struggle to explain exactly when feelings changed. They didn't notice the shift happening in real time. Emotional momentum works because it bypasses logic. When emotions are flowing, the mind relaxes. When the mind relaxes, the heart opens. And when the heart opens, attachment forms without resistance. This is also why women often say things like, I don't know how it happened, or it wasn't planned. What they're describing is an emotional process so smooth that it felt effortless. Men who interrupt momentum do so by seeking certainty. They ask questions that pull her out of the moment. They seek reassurance. They overclarify. They pause energy to feel safe. But safety in romance comes from flow, not pauses. When you allow emotion to move uninterrupted, the connection builds on itself. Each moment carries emotional residue from the last. Laughter makes closeness feel natural. Closeness makes intimacy feel earned. And intimacy, once emotionally justified, feels right instead of rushed. This is also why women remember feelings more vividly than details. They don't remember exact words, but they remember how relaxed they felt, how present you were, how natural everything felt. That's emotional momentum at work. A man who understands this stops trying to make things happen. He focuses on not stopping what's already happening. He doesn't slow moments with fear. He doesn't speed them up with urgency. He stays grounded and lets emotional gravity do the work. When emotional momentum is maintained, romance doesn't feel like progression. It feels like unfolding. And when a woman later looks back, the only way she can describe it is honestly and instinctively. One thing just led to the next. When women say, one thing just led to the next, what they're really describing is the feeling of being led without resistance, not rushed, not manipulated, but guided. Masculine leadership removes the need for her to pause, evaluate, or decide what should happen next. And when decision-making pressure disappears, romance flows naturally. Feminine energy is expressive, emotional, intuitive, but it is not designed to constantly decide. When a woman feels responsible for choosing direction, setting pace, or navigating every moment, she's pulled out of emotion and into logic. And logic breaks the romantic state. That's why connections stall when men hesitate, ask too many questions, or wait for permission at every turn. Leadership isn't control. Leadership is clarity. When a man leads confidently, the moment doesn't feel planned, it feels guided. She doesn't feel like something is happening to her. She feels like she's moving with the experience. And that's when romance gains momentum without friction. Masculine leadership creates emotional ease. When you decide where to go next, shift environments smoothly, or naturally escalate closeness, you free her from thinking. That freedom is what makes moments feel organic. She doesn't stop to evaluate because she trusts the direction. Trust replaces hesitation, and hesitation is what usually interrupts attraction. This is why women often describe romantic experiences without details. They don't recall transitions because they didn't feel the shift. Nothing felt forced. Nothing felt awkward. Nothing required a conscious decision. The experience unfolded like a story, not a series of choices. Men who don't lead disrupt momentum accidentally. They ask, "What do you want to do?" They wait for signals that never need to exist. They pause energy to be safe. And in doing so, they create emotional speed bumps. Each pause pulls her out of the experience and into analysis. Each moment of indecision asks her to step into masculine energy, and desire never grows where polarity collapses. Masculine leadership keeps her grounded in the moment because she senses that someone capable is guiding the experience. This doesn't mean ignoring her comfort or boundaries. It means reading her emotional state and moving accordingly with confidence. She feels seen, supported, and safe enough to let go. This is why the best romantic memories are rarely planned in advance. They're shaped in real time by a man who responds with certainty, not hesitation. When leadership is present, progression feels effortless. It doesn't feel like steps, it feels like continuity. Importantly, leadership doesn't mean speed, it means alignment. A grounded man feels the pace and honors it without freezing or forcing. He moves just enough to keep momentum alive. When a transition feels right, he acts. When the moment asks for stillness, he holds it confidently. That attunement is what makes moments blend seamlessly into one another. Women feel safe when leadership is calm. They feel relaxed when direction is clear. They feel connected when progress doesn't require negotiation. And that's when romance lives in the body, not the mind. A man who leads well doesn't need to explain what happened. She won't need to either, because from her point of view, nothing felt deliberate. It simply flowed. Masculine leadership removes the need to decide. When women explain a romantic experience by saying, "one thing just led to the next," they're revealing something fundamental about feminine attraction. The absence of decision making is what allows romance to unfold naturally. That phrase doesn't mean things happened randomly. It means they happened smoothly, without friction, hesitation, or interruption. And the reason that happens is simple. Masculine leadership removes the pressure for her to decide what comes next. Feminine energy thrives in feeling, not planning. The moment a woman has to stop and think, analyze, or choose direction, she's pulled out of the emotional flow and into logic. Logic is useful for life, but it's deadly for romance. Romance lives in sensation, mood, and momentum. When a man leads confidently, he protects that emotional state by carrying the burden of direction himself. Masculine leadership isn't about control. It's about clarity and movement. A man who leads doesn't constantly ask, "What do you want to do now?" He reads the moment and acts. He feels the energy and guides it forward. That guidance is what makes everything feel effortless from her side. She's not weighing options. She's not calculating consequences. She's not managing the pace. She's simply present, responding emotionally rather than intellectually. This is why women don't remember the transitions. They don't remember when one thing turned into another because nothing felt like a decision point. The evening didn't stop to ask permission to evolve. It just did. Men often misunderstand this and think leadership means being dominant or forceful. But true masculine leadership is calm, grounded, and responsive. It's knowing when to move and when to pause without asking the moment to justify itself. It's trusting your read of the situation enough to guide without hesitation. When leadership is missing, everything feels segmented. Conversation feels separate from closeness. Closeness feels separate from intimacy. Intimacy feels separate from connection. Each stage becomes a hurdle instead of a flow, and each hurdle gives the mind time to interfere. But when leadership is present, the experience becomes continuous. Conversation naturally deepens. Proximity feels right. Closeness doesn't need explanation. And because the moment never stops to be evaluated, it keeps moving forward organically. This is also why women often say, I don't know how it happened. They know how it felt, but not when it changed. That's leadership at work. A man who leads well doesn't rush, he doesn't drag. He sets a pace that feels grounded and intentional. He changes environments smoothly. He transitions without announcement. He maintains momentum without pressure. And because of that, the emotional current stays uninterrupted. Leadership also communicates safety. When a woman feels a man is comfortable guiding the moment, she doesn't feel the need to guard it. She relaxes. She softens. She trusts. That trust removes internal resistance, which is why romance starts to feel inevitable rather than chosen. Men who hesitate think they're being respectful, but excessive hesitation actually creates uncertainty. Uncertainty forces her to think. Thinking breaks the spell. Masculine leadership keeps her in the body, not the head. When the emotional experience is being held and guided, romance feels like a natural progression instead of a series of conscious steps. And when it's over, when she's asked to explain why it felt special, the only thing that makes sense to say is the truth. One thing just led to the next. When women say, one thing just led to the next, there's another layer beneath leadership and momentum that most men overlook: emotional safety, not comfort, not predictability. Emotional safety, the feeling that she can stay present, expressive, and open without needing to protect herself emotionally. When this safety exists, desire doesn't need to be forced, it expands on its own. Emotional safety is what allows a woman to stop monitoring herself. Most women are constantly tracking how they're being perceived. They're aware of expectations, judgments, and outcomes. When that awareness is active, attraction stays muted. Desire doesn't fully turn on when the nervous system is alert. It turns on when the nervous system relaxes. A grounded masculine presence creates that relaxation. This doesn't come from compliments or reassurance. It comes from emotional steadiness. A man who isn't reactive. A man who doesn't take everything personally. A man whose mood doesn't rise and fall based on her responses. When a woman senses that a man can hold emotional space without needing validation, she feels safe to let her guard down. And when the guard drops, curiosity and desire rise. This is why women often feel deeply drawn to men who seem calm under pressure. Men who aren't rushing outcomes. Men who aren't anxiously trying to secure attraction. Emotional safety is communicated through patience, grounded body language, and an unspoken confidence that nothing needs to be proven. Men who lack this unknowingly create tension. They over-explain. They seek reassurance. They push for clarity. All of these behaviors signal internal instability. Even if the words are polite, the energy underneath creates pressure. Pressure makes her pull back, not because she isn't attracted, but because her system can't relax. When emotional safety is present, moments stop feeling risky. A woman doesn't feel like she has to justify her feelings or predict consequences. She stays with what she feels now. That presence is where romance lives. This is also why escalation feels natural when safety exists. Touch doesn't feel sudden. Closeness doesn't feel rushed. Intimacy doesn't feel confusing. Each step feels like a continuation of the same emotional tone, not a shift that requires mental approval. Men often think desire grows through stimulation alone. But stimulation without safety creates anxiety. Safety without stimulation creates friendship. The balance of masculine, calm, and emotional direction allows desire to deepen without resistance. Emotional safety is built when a man stays congruent. He says what he means without needing approval. He allows silence without filling it. He receives her emotions without trying to fix them. He remains grounded even when energy shifts. This steadiness tells her subconsciously, I don't need you to be a certain way. And that freedom is intoxicating. When a woman feels emotionally free, she explores connection more deeply. She leans in, she invests, she stays longer in moments. And because nothing feels risky, nothing feels forced. Attraction builds quietly, naturally, and steadily. Later, when she reflects on the experience, she doesn't remember a moment where she decided to trust or open up. She just remembers feeling comfortable enough to stay. That's why her explanation is simple and honest. It just happened. And it did because emotional safety allowed everything else to follow without resistance. When women say, one thing just led to the next, they're also describing the feeling of losing track of time, sequence, and expectation. That only happens when a man understands how to balance familiarity with mystery. Too much predictability kills desire. Too much uncertainty creates anxiety. The sweet spot where romance feels alive is right in between. Feminine attraction is deeply tied to anticipation. Not shock, not surprise for the sake of surprise, but a subtle sense that something more is coming without needing to know exactly what or when. Mystery keeps the emotional mind engaged. It keeps her leaning forward internally, present with the experience instead of skipping ahead mentally. This is where many men unknowingly ruin momentum. They over-clarify. They narrate intentions too early. They explain feelings before they need to be explained. In doing so, they collapse anticipation. When everything is known, nothing is felt. Romance isn't powered by information. It's powered by emotional curiosity. A masculine man doesn't withhold to manipulate. He simply doesn't rush to resolve tension. He allows moments to breathe. Silence doesn't make him nervous. Unanswered emotional space doesn't make him uncomfortable. That comfort with ambiguity is incredibly attractive because it signals confidence and self-trust. A man who isn't desperate for certainty invites curiosity automatically. Mystery isn't about being confusing. It's about not being fully accessible all at once. Women bond emotionally through discovery. Each layer revealed over time feels earned, not given. When the pace is right, every new detail feels like a continuation of the same emotional story. Nothing feels abrupt. Nothing feels forced. One moment naturally opens the door to the next. This is why women often can't pinpoint when things became romantic or intimate. There was no sharp turn, no announcement, no clear switch. The experience unfolded gradually, wrapped in emotional intrigue. Predictable men create checkpoints. Mysterious men create flow. Predictability makes her mind wander ahead, evaluating outcomes, labeling the connection, calculating risk. Mystery keeps her grounded in now, and attraction only exists in the present moment. A masculine man understands this intuitively. He doesn't rush to label the connection. He doesn't overshare his future plans early. He lets emotions surface naturally instead of dragging them into the open prematurely. That restraint isn't fear, it's emotional intelligence. Importantly, mystery doesn't mean distance or coldness. The connection remains warm, grounded, and safe. What's missing is overexposure. He gives her enough to feel secure, but not so much that the experience becomes flat. Think of it like a slow, burning fire. The warmth draws her in. The glow keeps her comfortable. The unseen depth of the flame keeps her curious. Men who rush clarity think they're accelerating intimacy. In reality, they're ending the emotional journey too soon. Once the mind knows, it stops feeling. Once everything is explained, nothing is discovered. But when discovery remains alive, progression feels effortless. Each moment feels like the natural outcome of the last. There's no internal debate, no mental permission required, just continued presence. That's why looking back, women don't say, he did this, then that, then I decided. They say, it just happened. Because desire, when fed by mystery and grounded by masculine calm, doesn't announce itself, it unfolds. Another reason women describe romance as one thing just led to the next is because authentic emotion bypasses analysis. When something feels genuine in the body, the mind doesn't interfere. Logic only steps in when emotions feel unclear, forced, or inconsistent. But when the emotional signal is clean and congruent, a woman doesn't need to question it. She experiences it. This is where authenticity becomes magnetic. Women are extremely sensitive to emotional incongruence. They may not consciously explain it, but they feel it immediately. When a man says the right things but doesn't feel grounded in himself, her intuition senses the gap. That gap triggers analysis. Analysis slows everything down. And once analysis enters, romance loses its fluidity. But when a man's words, tone, behavior, and energy are aligned, emotion feels real. There's no performance to decode, no intention to second guess. What she feels matches what she sees. And when emotion feels real, the experience carries her forward naturally. Real emotion doesn't create urgency, it creates trust. This is why men who try to game attraction often fail. Even if tactics work briefly, they introduce mental noise. A woman starts to think, why did he say that? Or what does this mean? The moment emotion becomes something to interpret, momentum breaks. Authenticity keeps everything simple. A grounded man doesn't perform interest, he allows it. He doesn't exaggerate emotions to impress. He doesn't suppress them to appear detached. He expresses what's true without attachment to outcome. That emotional honesty feels clean, and clean emotion is relaxing. When a woman feels emotionally relaxed, she doesn't track progression. She's not checking boxes. She's not managing impressions. She's responding moment by moment to how she feels. That's why later she can't explain the progression logically. It never existed that way. Men often underestimate how powerful calm sincerity is. They think attraction is built by excitement alone. But excitement without authenticity creates instability. Authenticity creates continuity. It allows excitement, comfort, curiosity, and desire to exist in the same emotional space without conflict. When emotions don't conflict, they blend. This blending is what creates the sense of inevitability women describe. There's no sudden emotional jump, no internal debate. One feeling naturally opens into another. Interest becomes warmth. Warmth becomes closeness. Closeness becomes desire. And desire feels justified because it grew from something real. Authentic emotion also removes the need for justification. A woman doesn't feel like she has to explain why she's drawn in. She doesn't need a story to protect herself. When something feels honest, it doesn't trigger defense mechanisms. That's why she doesn't say, "I decided to trust him." She says, "I just felt comfortable." That comfort is emotional alignment. A man aligned with himself doesn't rush bonding, but he also doesn't hold back truth out of fear. He lets emotion surface when it's real, not when it's convenient. That timing matters more than words. When emotion appears naturally, it's received naturally. This is also why shared moments feel timeless. When emotion is authentic, the mind isn't measuring time or outcome. It's present. And presence is what allows romance to unfold without interruption. Later, when asked to explain how things progressed, logic can't reconstruct what never happened logically in the first place. The only accurate explanation is the simplest one. It just felt right, and one thing led to the next. The final reason women say one thing just led to the next is because true romance has no sense of force, no pressure, no agenda, no grasping for outcomes. When nothing is being pushed, nothing needs to resist. And when there's no resistance, progression feels organic instead of intentional. Force doesn't always look aggressive. Sometimes it looks subtle. It's the man who's secretly trying to get somewhere. The man who's mentally tracking progress. The man who's worried about whether things are moving fast enough. Even when he hides it well, the energy leaks, and women feel it. Feminine intuition reads direction before words. When a man is outcome focused, the moment stops being about connection and starts being about destination. That shift, even if unspoken, introduces pressure. Pressure pulls her out of experience and into awareness. And awareness is what disrupts romantic flow. When romance is free of force, there's no sense of being led toward a result. There's only presence. And presence is where desire lives. A man who isn't forcing doesn't mean a man who is passive. It means a man who is grounded in himself. He's content whether the moment continues or ends. He's enjoying the interaction for what it is, not what it could become. That emotional independence creates space, and space allows things to unfold naturally. This is why detachment is misunderstood. It's not about acting uninterested. It's about being internally okay without needing a specific outcome to validate you. When a woman feels that emotional independence, she relaxes. She doesn't feel evaluated. She doesn't feel used. She doesn't feel rushed. And when she relaxes, connection deepens. Forced energy creates checkpoints. Unforced energy creates flow. In unforced interactions, moments don't feel like steps toward intimacy. They feel like expressions of connection. Touch feels natural. Silence feels comfortable. Escalation feels like continuation instead of decision. Nothing feels like it needs justification. Women often describe these experiences as easy, natural, or effortless, not because nothing happened, but because nothing was pushed. The relationship didn't need logic to move forward. It moved because emotion allowed it. Men who force outcomes often think they're being masculine. In reality, masculine strength is shown through restraint, through patience, through trust in the moment. A grounded man doesn't rush chemistry, he allows it. And because nothing is being forced, desire feels safe to expand. This also explains why women feel more attached after experiences that felt unplanned. When there's no obvious agenda, emotions feel authentic. there's no need to question motives. The connection feels real rather than engineered. And when something feels real, attachment forms quietly. Later, when she's asked how things progressed, she won't point to a specific move or moment. There was no push to recall, no pressure to justify, only continuity, only feeling. That's when romance stops being something that happens to her and starts being something she feels inside herself. And when that happens, explanation becomes impossible. So she smiles, shrugs slightly, and tells the truth as simply as she can. One thing just led to the next.